Welcome to today's video about 10 mind-bending coincidences that sound like fiction but happened in real life. Number 1. The unsinkable ship that sank twice. A novelist sketches a disaster and the ocean obliges. In 1898, sailor-turned-writer Morgan Robertson publishes Futility, a brisk tale about a record-breaking British liner christened Titan, an engineering marvel, triple-screw propulsion, luxury stacked on luxury, and a swaggering claim: unsinkable. On a frigid April night in the North Atlantic, Titan strikes an iceberg at speed. With lifeboats fitted only to meet archaic regulations, thousands aboard are left to the black water. 14 years later, the White Star Line launches its own pride, RMS Titanic. Bigger, brighter, practically unsinkable, carrying magnates and celebrities on her maiden run from Southampton. April again, North Atlantic again, an iceberg again. This time the body count carries names we still recognize. Here, the coincidences stop being cute and start feeling surgical. Robertson's ship runs roughly 800 feet. Titanic spans about 882. Both carry around 3,000 souls at capacity. Both rely on triple screws. Both meet their fate in April ice within sight on a navigator's chart of the same North Atlantic corridor. Titan carries 24 lifeboats, Titanic only 20. Not enough for the bodies on board, but technically enough for the law as written. When critics resurrect Robertson after 1912, they accuse him of clairvoyance. He shrugs. No prophecy, just pattern recognition. As a mariner, he knew where ice congregates in spring, how shipbuilding was racing toward size over safety, and how lifeboat rules hadn't kept pace. He did the math, and the math did the rest. Why does this story get under the skin? Because the details line up too neatly for comfort. Name, month, route, failure mode, lifeboats. We want to file it under chance, but the part of the brain wired for threat whispers, "What else have we been warned about and ignored?" If fiction can prefigure tragedy with that kind of fidelity, what does it say about the grooves history prefers to fall into? And if the sea can echo a page, what happens when power does the same? When nations rerun their own scripts with different actors but identical beats? Number 2. The presidential déjà vu. A century apart, two presidents step into the same outline. Abraham Lincoln goes to Congress in 1846, John F. Kennedy, 1946. Lincoln wins the White House in 1860, Kennedy, 1960. Each arrives as a reformer with a civil rights agenda and a country split at the seams. Each faces bitter enemies who insist the moment is too big for him and the risks too great for the nation. The vice presidents waiting in the wings? Both named Johnson. Andrew Johnson is born in 1808, Lyndon B. Johnson in 1908. The calendar keeps ringing that eerie 100-year bell. Then, the gunshots. Friday, a public setting. A wife at his side. Lincoln is shot at Ford's Theater. Kennedy in a Lincoln made by Ford. The assassins arrive with three-part names: John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald. 15 letters apiece, a triviality that somehow feels like a fingerprint. Booth fires in a theater and flees toward a barn. Oswald fires from a book depository and flees into a theater. Neither lives to testify. The footnotes pile up. Lincoln's secretary, Kennedy, reportedly warns him off the theater. Kennedy's secretary, Evelyn Lincoln, reportedly warns him off Dallas. The mind resists, then relents. Surely this is a parlor trick of statistics, cherry-picking rhymes from a library of facts. And yet the stack is heavy in the hand. What matters isn't mysticism. It's the pattern tension creates. Two leaders push into the same weather system, war, social upheaval, fear, and collide with the same vortex. A man with a gun, a nation stunned, a successor sworn in before the shock wears off. History doesn't need a crystal ball to repeat itself. It only needs conditions that haven't changed. And when our institutions hum the same melody, we get the same chorus. If statecraft can echo this precisely, imagine the chill when fate decides to go literal, when a man meets his mirror, and the mirror answers back. Number 3. The King and His Double, Monza, 1900. King Umberto I sits down to dinner and looks up into his own face. The restaurateur taking his order could be his twin, same jawline, same eyes, same carriage. Curiosity opens the door, the facts flood in. The man's name is Umberto. He was born in Turin, the king's city, on the same day, 14th of March, 1844. He married a woman named Margherita on the very day the king married Queen Margherita. He opened this restaurant on the day Umberto was crowned. The stack of parallels stops feeling whimsical and starts to hum with pressure. The king, amused and moved, promises to recognize his service. He invites his double to a sporting event the next day. Morning arrives with a knife. News reaches the royal box. The restaurateur has been shot in the street hours earlier. A senseless squall of violence that snuffs out the man who wore the king's face. Shock ripples through the entourage, and then the second blade falls. An anarchist steps from the crowd, raises a revolver, and puts 4 rounds into Umberto I. The king dies where he stands, his heart pierced, just hours after his look-alike. 2 lives that mapped each other beat for beat end in the same key, on the same day, in the same city. You can call it chance and be right. You can also feel the vertigo of symmetry and be honest. Doppelgangers belong to folklore for a reason. They dramatize our fear that identity is a pattern, not a person, and that patterns close the loop, whether we want them to or not. A novelist's ship becomes a headline. A nation's tensions echo across a century. A king meets his mirror, and both fall to bullets within a single sunset. Therefore, if we think coincidences are harmless curios, we may be missing what they signal. Not destiny, but direction. Tracks we lay without noticing, and trains that arrive exactly on time. Number 4. The Tale of Richard Parker. Fiction sketches a nightmare. Real life traces it line for line. In 1838, Edgar Allan Poe publishes his only novel, a sea story that ends where humanity is thinnest. 4 castaways, a raft, and a lottery no one wants to win. The cabin boy draws the short straw. His name is Richard Parker. He is killed and eaten so the others might live. 46 years later, the English yacht Mignonette founders in the South Atlantic. 4 survivors climb into a dinghy. Captain Tom Dudley, Edwin Stevens, Edmund Brooks, and a 17-year-old orphan. His name is Richard Parker. Adrift for weeks with barely a turtle to share and no fresh water, the boy drinks seawater, collapses, and begins to fail. The men talk, hesitate, and cross a line you don't cross back from. Therefore, the case becomes larger than survival. When they're rescued, England doesn't put their hunger on trial. It puts necessity itself on trial. R versus Dudley and Stevens rules that necessity is not a defense to murder, even at sea, even on a raft, even when death is the only alternative. Law hardens where life had gone soft. But the name sticks in the teeth. Richard Parker in Poe's pages, Richard Parker in the lifeboat's silence. The mind gropes for a trick, common name, sailor's lore, and still bumps into the outline that matches too cleanly. 4 men, starvation, a boy, a killing, a rescue, a reckoning. Act 1 is dread. The sea strips men to bone and principle. Poe imagines how far that stripping can go. Act 2 is decision. A captain weighs 1 life against 3 and tells himself the storm demanded it. Act 3 is judgment. A courtroom declares that demand is not destiny, that some lines must remain unbroken, even when everything else breaks. But the echo that won't quit is literary, not legal. A writer's grisly fiction precedes a grisly fact, and the shared name feels like a signature. If we want to call it coincidence, fine, but then explain why certain stories seem to lie in wait for us, as if they were weather patterns we sail into even while swearing we've chosen a new route. And if the sea can keep its promises, what happens when the sky does too? Number 5. Mark Twain and the Comet. He joked about timing like it was an old friend, then timed his exit like a cue. Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, was born in 1835. The year Halley's Comet last blazed close enough to make newspapers rhapsodize. Late in life, he looks up, does the math, and says it out loud in 1909. I came in with Halley's Comet. It returns next year, and I expect to go out with it. Not prophecy, patter. Not mysticism, showman's instinct for symmetry. But the sky obliges. In April 1910, as the comet sweeps past Earth on its scheduled arc, Twain dies of a heart attack on the 21st, 1 day after its closest approach. Entrance and exit stamped by the same celestial visitor. Therefore, the story sells itself because it compresses a lifetime into a clean loop. Comet in, write her in. Comet out, write her out. It flatters our yearning for narrative closure, the idea that a life should rhyme with its first line. Yet, if you strip away the poetry, the mechanism is simple. A periodic comet passes every 75 to 76 years. Millions are born near it. One of them becomes Mark Twain and plants a flag on the coincidence by calling his shot. The power isn't in probability. It's in framing. Twain understood that audiences don't remember dates. They remember patterns with a punchline. He turned an orbital schedule into a personal myth. Act 1 is the setup. A boy from Missouri arrives as the world looks up. Act 2 is the persona, the river pilot who becomes America's conscience and court jester, narrating our follies with a grin and a blade. Act 3 is the exit line. A man who spent a career arranging words leaves behind one last arrangement: life as a visual gag you can point to in the sky. But the undercurrent is serious. We keep these stories because they teach us how to look, not just at events, but at alignments. When the same shape appears twice, sea and court, comet and man, we lean in. And if the cosmos can be coaxed into symmetry by a sentence, what happens when DNA takes a turn at the wheel? Number 6. The Jim Twins. 2 boys are separated at birth in the 1940s Ohio, adopted by different families, and grow up unaware the other exists. Both families pick the same name, James. Decades pass. In 1979, the men meet, and the inventory starts. 6 feet tall, 180 pounds. Childhood dogs, both named Toy. School strengths in math, trouble with spelling. Fondness for woodworking and mechanical drawing. Adult lives line up like rungs on the same ladder. Each marries a Linda, divorces, then marries a Betty. Each names a son James, Alan/Alan. Each works part-time as a sheriff's deputy. Each chain smokes Salem's. Each drives a light blue Chevrolet. Each battles tension headaches and chewed nails. Each vacations at the same little Florida beach. The list sounds like a prank until it doesn't end. Therefore, the story shifts from coincidence to question. How much of a life is preference, and how much is pattern written in code? The University of Minnesota's twin studies pull at that thread, using cases like the Jim twins to map heritability across temperament, health, even micro-habits. Genes are not a script, but they're not background noise either. They're a strong baseline you hear whether you notice it or not. But we should resist the easy slide into fatalism. For every shared cigarette brand, there's an unshared argument, a different friend, a missed turn that didn't match. The point isn't that freedom is fake. It's that freedom steers within lanes we barely see. Act 1 is the setup. 2 lives launched from the same blueprint, scattered into different homes. Act 2 is discovery. The eerie ledger of overlaps that gives even skeptics a pause. Act 3 is interpretation. Not destiny, but disposition. Not clones, but echoes traveling through environments that unwittingly rhyme. And yet the emotional punch lands outside the lab. You listen to the tally. Toy, Linda, Betty, Alan, Deputy, Salem, Chevy, and feel the ground tilt. Maybe we're not just pattern seeking. Maybe we're pattern keeping, repeating choices that feel like ours because they fit the grain. If names, jobs, and beaches can sync without coordination, what else is quietly harmonizing in the background, waiting to be noticed in the next reunion, the next headline, the next mirror? Number 7. Anthony Hopkins and the Lost Book. An actor needs a book. London shrugs. Early 1970s, Anthony Hopkins is cast in the film of George Pfeiffer's The Girl from Petrovka. He does what serious actors do, chases the source text. Shop to shop, clerk to clerk, nothing. Closing time approaches. The tube is a mercy exit. Leicester Square, a bench, an abandoned paperback with a bent spine and a smear of city grit. He picks it up. Of all titles in London, it's The Girl from Petrovka. You can file that as luck and move on, until the loop closes on itself 2 years later. Filming is underway when Hopkins chats with Pfeiffer. The author laments that he doesn't even have a copy. He'd lent out his personal, heavily annotated one and had vanished somewhere in the city. Hopkins goes quiet, retrieves his bench rescue, and hands it over. Margin notes, underlines. The author's own scrawl stares back at him. Same book, same ink, same lost artifact that had threaded its way through millions of people to the one man who needed it most. Not only found, a homing pigeon that landed on the correct shoulder. Therefore, the story isn't just serendipity, it's topology. In a city mapped by coincidence, the shortest path between author and actor happened to be a train platform. Act 1. Need, scarcity, a found object. Act 2. Revelation. The object isn't generic, it's specific. even personal, with fingerprints you can read. Act 3. Meaning. No prophecy, only a reminder that networks carry more than passengers. They carry narratives, looking for their next node. We remember this tale because the object behaves like a character with agency, closing a loop humans rarely see close so cleanly. What does it signal beyond charm? That our sense of the improbable is bad at counting routes through a dense graph. Given enough benches, readers, and rehearsals, one path will look staged. Yet the feeling sticks. A book seemed to know where to be. And if a paperback can complete a circle between maker and performer, consider a concrete arc 13 years long. 2 lives, same surname, meeting on the same date of the same project's timeline. When coincidence leaves the library and walks onto a dam, it stops being whimsical and starts feeling engraved. Number 8. The First and Last Man of the Dam. Before it was a postcard, the Hoover Dam was a risk ledger. Heat that wilted steel, heights that erased men. Budgets, quarried stone, spillways the size of cathedrals. The first loss on that ledger bears a surveyor's name, J.G. Tierney. December 20th, 1922. While scouting the Colorado for a place to pin the river, he falls into the winter water and doesn't come back. His death predates the contracts and the headlines. He is the prologue written in cold current. Work begins. Years grind past. Concrete cures in interlocking blocks while workers trade shifts with the sun. 96 lives will be swallowed by heat stroke, falls, equipment, chance. Therefore, the dam acquires a human symmetry nobody ordered. December 20th, 1935. Exactly 13 years to the day after the river took the father, Patrick Tierney, an electrician's helper, falls from an intake tower and dies. The last official fatality on the project carries the first man's surname and more, his bloodline. Father and son bookend a national landmark with matching dates like quotation marks you don't see until the printing is done. Act 1. The First Tierney, the scout who dies, naming a future. Act 2. A monument raised by thousands, each shift wagering hours against gravity and heat. Act 3. The sun's fall on the anniversary of the father's, the ledger snapping shut. We can explain nothing and still feel everything. The statistician shrugs. Many names, many risks, many days. Coincidences cluster. The storyteller notes the 13-year interval, the date reprise, the genealogy, and hears a chord resolve. Projects this large hoard tragedies. This one arranged 2 into a pattern our minds can't help but honor. The dam holds back a river. The dates hold together a narrative. And the sensation that patterns want to complete themselves only intensifies when the parallel tightens further. Same genes, same age, same road, same hour. No project, no plan. Just a country lane and a calendar that wasn't asked for its opinion. Number 9. The Finnish Twin Tragedy. Rahe, Finland, 2002. A 70-year-old man pedals toward a highway crossing where trucks moan past with winter stoicism. He angles for the gap, misjudges, and a heavy lorry ends the question. It's the kind of accident that becomes a police report, a paragraph, a funeral. 2 hours later, less than a mile down the same road, another 70-year-old cyclist reaches for the same calculation. Different truck, same mistake, same instant velocity. He dies on impact. Officers secure the scene, compare notes, and feel their own notes go flat when the ID checks clear. The men are identical twins. Therefore, the case refuses to sit quietly under tragic coincidence. The brothers lived apart, planned nothing together that day, had no shared appointment with that stretch of asphalt. Yet here is Act 1. Routine turned fatal. Act 2. Repetition. The second fall, the echo in steel and sirens. Act 3. Recognition. The biographies converge in death, twins bookending a 2-hour span on a single line of road. You can throw probability at the story. It will absorb the numbers and hand you back the same chill. Policemen on the scene said it gave them shivers. The public read it twice, then again, trying to bargain with causality. If not fate, then what? If not fate, then how? We reach for patterns because they help us brace against randomness. We recoil from patterns because they suggest puppetry. This tale hits both nerves at once. Genetics explains shared traits, not synchronized exits. Habit explains bicycles, not clockwork. The mind toggles. Perhaps they rode that road for decades. Perhaps traffic conditions aligned. Perhaps the second brother heard of the first and went looking. But the investigation said they didn't. What remains is an ache shaped like a question. When lives begin as one story and diverge into two, we expect the endings to broaden, not tighten. And yet, sometimes the world folds the pages together so neatly that we can't help turning to numbers for comfort. A number that haunted a dynasty. A date that wouldn't let go. A pattern that pretends to be a curse. The last one. The Romanov Curse and the number 17. Empires don't usually fall with a drumbeat, yet the last Romanovs kept hearing the same number. The calendar flips to 1917 and Russia fractures. Crowds surge, soldiers defect, palaces dim. Nicholas II signs his abdication as if signing off on a century, and the year itself, 17, feels like a verdict. Therefore, the number begins to glow in the margins. Revolutions misaligned by calendar. October 25th by the Julian clock, November 7th by the Gregorian. A 7, hiding inside dates like a watermark. Lenin's April theses in 1917 setting the fuse. A dynasty that began in 1613 facing arithmetic that keeps collapsing toward the same sum. You can call it numerology and walk away. You can also admit that repetition is a story engine and the digits are doing their job. Act 1 is unraveling. Shortages, rumors, desertions, a monarch out of rhythm with a modern century. The royal train lurches east. Loyalists negotiate. Guards change shifts and loyalties. Therefore, Act 2 is confinement. The Ipatiev house in Yekaterinburg becomes a waiting room with locks. The imperial family reduced to a household where windows are painted over and conversations drop when boots approach. Details ossify into legend, steps counted to the cellar. A family that once ruled a sixth of the earth, now measuring days by meals and visits. The number keeps winking. 17th of July, 1918, the hour before dawn. Doors open, orders are read, the room turns to noise and smoke. Act 3 is aftermath. Bodies moved, stories buried, bones argued over for decades, a nation learning to live without a crown and with a myth. Therefore, the number hardens into lore, stitched by hindsight into a pattern. 1917, 17th of July, sevenths hidden in revolutions that changed nameplates and calendars at once. Skeptics are right. Our pattern-hungry brains adore arithmetic that flatters a narrative, but the shiver comes from fit. A house chosen for execution, a date chosen by logistics, a year chosen by history, all resolving to the same chord. We don't need a curse to feel the trap close. We only need repetition. And when that repetition crowns a century of echoes, from a novelist's iceberg to a president's Friday to twins on a road, it stops reading like trivia and starts feeling like a map we only notice after we've already walked it. We chase coincidences because they make chaos feel legible, and we fear them because they hint at rails we didn't lay. Ships crash where fiction warned. Presidents fall in rhymes, a century apart. Twins meet the same end on the same road. A king finds his mirror, and fate doubles down. A comet keeps an author's punchline. Therefore, here's the deeper takeaway. Patterns don't predict your future, but they do reveal the grooves our world tends to follow. Laws that lag, systems that repeat, habits that harden. Notice them, and you're not a passenger anymore. If this journey sparked something in you, curiosity, awe, maybe a little chill, tell me what moment hit hardest. Drop your takeaway in the comments and add the phrase, "I saw the pattern," so I'll know you made it to the end. And tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If someone you know would get a kick out of this, share it with them. Sometimes a single story is the spark that pulls a friend out of the doom scroll and into wonder. If you're new here, welcome. Subscribe and tap the bell to join a community that lives at the intersection of curiosity and clarity. We explore history's echoes, science's edge cases, and the strange places where reality feels scripted. Like the video if this was time well spent. It helps more curious minds find us. Thanks for staying with me all the way. Your attention is rare, and I don't take it lightly. Until next time, keep your eyes open for the quiet rhymes in your own life. And when you spot one, write it down. That's how we turn coincidence into insight, and insight into action.